to the IDF, death to the IDF. Heard you want your country back. Shut the fuck up.
Glastonbury is a kind of pagan festival. Glastonbury is a kind of sacred site. Have you been to Glastonbury? Have you looked at the tor on the hill there? Have you heard the myths that Joseph of Arimathea maybe went there? That maybe the Holy Grail is there in Glastonbury? Let's have a look at what was going on at Glastonbury, and let's have a look at it as a lens to understand our identity right now. Because in Britain, people are about to be conscripted. In Britain, phones are going to be going off, telling you that wars are coming. All phones to blast that emergency alarm in system test as the government warns the UK to prepare for war. Conscription could be coming back. Meanwhile, at a secular festival, Glastonbury, the punked up Bob Vylan chants death to the Israel Defence Forces. That's because there's a lot of division about British support of Israel, whether that's military or economic or even just transactional support through the arms industry. It's a divisive subject. It's always been a divisive subject. Is Glastonbury a political forum? Is there such a thing as an apolitical forum? This is what Owen Jones, socialist or, left-wing British journalist said. He chanted death to the IDF. If he'd have changed it to death to the Russian army, the Daily Mail wouldn't have splashed on it, demanded his arrest. Arrest punk band who led death to Israel's chants at Glastonbury. Okay, so there's Owen Jones, sort of generally supportive of it. This is Nigel Farage, leader of Reform, which is, I guess, British MAGA. You can't make direct comparisons, can you? Britain's a very different country from yours. Nigel Farage is friends with Donald Trump. He's conservative right wing. If you vote Reform, you can have your country back from these lunatics. This will probably be used as Reform's campaign video released the day before the next general election. This is a country that doesn't seem to know itself very well at the moment. Now, Glastonbury, some would say it's a spectacle and a festival and a chance for celebration of the summertime. Well, even that now has become the scene of great division. Let's have a look.
Heard you want your country back. Shut the fuck up. Heard you want your country back. You can't have that. The only place I know, stolen right under my nose by ignorant scum, trying to lay claim to a land that ain't theirs anyway. Wait, what did you say? Heard you want your country back. Shut the fuck up. Heard you want your country back. You can't have that. Heard you want your country back. Shut the fuck up. Heard you want your country back. Well, shit, me too. Heard you want your country back. Heard you want your country back. Shut the fuck up. Heard you want your country back. Heard you want your country back. Can't have that. Heard you want your country back. Heard you want your country back. Shut the fuck up. Heard you want your country back. But you cannot have that.
I think he's just very excited. He's performing in public. Well, listen, I've got a very particular perspective on this. I used to be not famous. Then I got famous. And when I was first famous, I was still kind of carrying the freight weight trauma and scars of my previous life as a crack and heroin addict, as a member of a very particular social group in the UK. If you're a heroin addict and a crack addict, you exist outside the mainstream. You have to in order to survive. You are by default a criminal. Then when you have the sort of sudden bends and giddy vertigo of becoming famous, it's kind of bewildering. I don't know anything about Bob Vylan. That's the first time I've seen him. That's the first time I've heard his name. But what I recognise as someone who's been to Glastonbury, who's performed at Glastonbury, is that feeling of scintillation and excitement that sometimes happens in front of a crowd. Here's the bit where he said, death to the IDF.
Free, free! Free, free! Free, free! Alright, but have you heard this one though? Death to the IDF! 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 Hell yeah, from the river to the sea, Palestine must be, will be, inshallah, it will be free.
Now, the issue of Palestine and Israel is a complex regional dispute. You can take pretty clear moral positions based on Mosaic, ironically, law when it comes to death and murder and territory, protection of children, protection of women. We can all find a pretty simple route through those ideas. But you can see that in that cultural context, Palestine has a particular value and meaning. I think it means anti-establishment, I think is what it means there. Because I don't imagine that the crowd there or the artists there are examining the complex religious, political, economic, resource-based history of Israel, or the Balfour Treaty, or the involvement of the Rothschilds, or the Israel that emerges out of the Old Testament, and the modern interpretation of Israel, and the various political allegiances and parties that exist within Israel and within Palestine, and the relationship between Iran and Hamas and Hezbollah. It's a very, very complicated idea. I think what we're kind of experiencing is a culture that's separating apart as the technology becomes available for decentralization en masse. There's no reason actually to have centralized national government for anything other than perhaps distribution of certain resources and national defense. Outside of that, we can have community democracy, syndicalism. We can have communities that are run according to some pretty tight tribal ideas. That's what I think is trying to emerge here. The rush for centralization through bureaucracies like the EU and NATO and old nation states that are backed up by commercial and corporate interests are starting to quake and shake. The first wave was the collapse of economic entities that we saw through Napster. Then we saw the emergence of Occupy, and then we saw the emergence of Donald Trump. And nationalism is one of the ideas that can hold. We can understand the idea of being patriotic in the UK, can we? But what is it now to be a UK patriot? Does it mean that you're pro-Palestine, or does it mean that you're pro-Israel? Or is it actually nothing to do with either of those ideas? Think about your daily life. Isn't your daily life about you and your family and your relationship with God and your relationship with your neighbours? How are you going to hold in your head an accurate understanding of what's happening in the Middle East? On both sides of that argument, there are reasonable people. There are brilliant journalists, academics, religious and political leaders making difficult and complex arguments about, well, of course, it's never right to kill a child. And then there's people saying, well, war is always uncomfortable. Do you think that Britain's colonization of India or America's occupation or wars in Southeast Asia were moral and ethical, or the way that America itself was established by European colonizers? You and me are not going to work it out, and they ain't going to work it out in Glastonbury. What will happen is different people will exploit that event at Glastonbury for their own political ends. The right will, the left will. That's how it will get utilised. But the simple truth is that people in the Middle East are going to have to come up with some regional solutions to their problems. People in Russia and Ukraine are going to have to come up with regional solutions to their problems. And I would suggest that we have maximal power in our own lives and our own communities, minimal taxation, minimal military intervention, minimal government intervention, minimal media manipulation. And then if there's a community over here that want to live like the reproductive system is, not primarily about reproduction, or gender identity can be determined by the individual, or that you're a devout Muslim or a devout Christian or a devout Jew or a devout atheist, or you want to be hedonistic and get up and hit the pipes first thing in the morning and spend your whole day in decadent wonder, then do that. We're not going to get one centralized ideology. The best shot we have is to surrender to God in ourselves. At least then we might have simple principles like kindness. Do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Maybe those kind of principles are something we can return to. The sort of chaos of that, man. When I watched that, I didn't think, this is the answer. This is the answer. That was not beautiful. You can't really judge it, is what I'm saying, on the basis of the flags and the symbols or even the language. That was anger, frustration. And anger and frustration are likely expressions of despair. I'm not offering you a psychoanalysis of Bob Vylan. I don't know anything about Bob Vylan. He looks very confident, good performer. That's my sort of review of that. What people are experiencing now is a catastrophe and crisis and the breaking down of our value systems. You can't conscript in a country like that. You can have conscription in Israel, actually, because Israel knows what its identity is. It's a country surrounded by opponents. You can have conscription on the Gaza Strip because they know what their identity is. You could probably have conscription in a variety of countries and communities around the world, but in the UK, a country that don't know who it is or where it's going or what it believes in or what a woman is or whether it's Christian or not Christian, you can't have conscription there. You can't have it both ways. You can't have principles that are indefatigable and undeniable while denouncing God. You can't have that. Either God is real or God ain't. And if God is real, it's pretty clear what God wants. God wants peace, harmony, surrender, service, love one another as I have loved you, and be willing to die for what you believe in. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the comments and the chat? Let me know whether you think Glastonbury should be political, apolitical, or if apolitical is even a category that exists. Free speech is under attack, Jack, but Rumble refuses to take it lying down. Rumble is farting out the fierce cock of authoritarianism and clamping shut the butt cheeks of free speech, baby. When major advertisers conspired to pull their dollary dues, even brands like Dunkin' Donuts turned their back, claiming Rumble had a right-wing culture. But we're not here to fit a mold. We're here to defend free expression. Content from creators like Russell Brand. Yo, I'm that dude. Dr. Disrespect, Tim Cast, and the Mug Club with Crowder. It's more than a subscription, it's a stand for free speech. Your voice matters. For a limited time, you can get $10 off an annual plan using the Rumble code BRAND. Visit rumble.com/premium/brand and claim your discount today. Together we can turn the tide, whether you join Rumble Premium or simply keep watching. Your support helps keep free speech alive, and with free speech, we can be free together. Subscribe to Rumble now. Thanks for watching the video. Have a look at this one over here, or join us Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday on Rumble.